Over the last 18 months, I sat down and analysed mortgage sales calls. You see, they weren't cherry-picked examples or polished demos. These were full-length, raw, real-life discovery calls and submission calls from mortgage brokers who I work with. Some were absolutely brilliant, by the way. Others were painful to watch, but all of them were honest. I wasn't just listening for entertainment. I was actually listening for patterns. I wanted to understand what the best brokers were doing consistently that the others weren't. The truth is, it wasn't charm. It wasn't product knowledge. It wasn't years of experience. It was the structure. The top performers had a repeatable rhythm. They weren't winging it. They weren't rushing it. They weren't guessing. They had frameworks, and those frameworks created calm, confidence, and conversion. So in this video, I'm going to walk through the 5 most important call frameworks that I observed in the top 10% of brokers. So if you've ever struggled to control a call, justify your fee, or sell protection effectively, you'll want to watch this all the way through. These aren't hacks, these are habits, and they can change your business. So the first framework is the call control framework, which is set, guide, and close. Now, the problem this solves is any chaos on the call. So let's talk about what happens on most calls. The broker starts well, friendly, upbeat. They maybe even cracking a joke to break the ice, but the client starts leading. The conversation jumps from rates to lenders to criteria to school catchments, all before the broker has even established some form of budget. There's no control, there's no clarity, and without structure, brokers become reactive. Clients start asking about 5-year fixed rates, and the broker dives straight into product talk, completely skipping over goals, income, protection, all of it. Now, what the top brokers do differently is the top performers approach their calls like a pilot with a pre-flight checklist. It's not robotic, but it's definitely not random either. They follow a very clear framework. I call this the set, guide, close. So set is they establish the agenda at the top of the call. So for example, today we'll go through your goals, your current situation, and map out the next steps. The second part is guide, which is they keep the conversation flowing but focused. That's really helpful. Let's loop back to your deposit before we move on. And then the close, which is they finish decisively with clear next actions. I'll send you the document upload now. Can we aim to have those by Friday? So let me give you a real world story from one of the calls I observed. A client of mine, for this video we'll call her Sarah. She was fantastic with people, absolutely brilliant, but her discovery calls felt like catching up with a friend, but she couldn't convert them. Clients kept saying it's a great call, but then they would disappear. We worked on the structure. We added a simple agenda at the beginning of the Zoom call, and we scripted a strong opening. She practiced call resets when things went off track, and within 2 weeks, her submission booking calls doubled. Why? Because clients now felt like she had a process. They felt safe. So if this is something you struggle with, the action I'd recommend you take is use a pre-written call agenda and establish it right at the beginning. Also use transitional phrases like before we move on, and always end with deadlines and a clear next step, preferably a calendar booking. So let's talk about the second framework, which is the 80-20 focus funnel. Now, the main problem this solves is talking too much and missing out on all the gold nuggets you need. You see, most brokers talk way too much, especially when they're nervous. They pitch, they explain, they fill silence, but the best information, the stuff that helps you close, it's hidden in the gaps. See, clients will tell you exactly what they need if you give them enough space. But most brokers, they miss it completely. So what do the top brokers do differently? Well, top performers, they ask intentional questions, and then they shut up. They don't rush in to fill silence, they wait, and they listen. Not just to answers, but to the tone, to the hesitation, to the emphasis on what the client is talking about. The structure that I call the 80-20 focus funnel. It's 80% listening. You should talk less than 20% of the time. The client should be speaking most. The areas you should focus on is family. So who is this home for? Finances. What's the income structure like? Fears. What's your biggest concern about moving? The future. What's your ideal outcome for the next 12 months? You want to blend logic and emotion together and combine practical and emotional questions. Another great thing here is to summarize often. Repeat key points back to the client. Another example of a client I had with this, let's call him James to protect their identities. James is a confident advisor. He was too confident though, to be honest. He was speaking 75-80% of the time on his calls. After reviewing 3 calls, I gave him this challenge. Talk for less than a third of the call. Ask 3 questions, then summarize. 1 week later, he sent me a message saying that he just closed a £338 premium for insurance. And the client thanked him for being the first advisor who really listened to his situation. So how can you action this yourself? Well, script 3 open-ended questions in each focus area of your calls. Use reflective listening. So phrases like, so what I'm hearing is, and also pause after a client finishes speaking. Let what they've said land with you and with everyone else in the room. So what is the third framework? Well, this is all about fee confidence, and I call it the anchor, justify, and normalize. So the problem here with this is if you are discounting and apologizing when it comes to your fees. Fee conversations can be really awkward. Many brokers treat their fees like a bit like a confession, to be fair. For example, like, we do charge a small fee, but is that okay? This type of conversation, this type of framing, this creates doubts. Clients pick up on hesitation. They're going to start negotiating, or even worse, they're just going to ghost you completely. So what do those top brokers do? Well, top brokers, they seem to talk about their fees a bit like gravity. It's just a fact of how the world works. They bring it up early, explain it clearly, and then they just move on. They use what I call the anchor, justify, and normalize framework. Anchor is they mention the fee early. So we do charge a fee. I'll walk you through what it includes shortly. The justify is they explain the outcomes, so speed, guidance, protection. That covers unlimited support, case tracking, full advice, and protection planning. And the normalize is they make it sound standard. It's how we work with all our clients. Now, a story of one of the things I noticed in the calls was I worked with another advisor. Again, this person, let's call her Fiona for this one. Again, all names are changed. She was actually charging £295, but hated saying it. She actually would mumble it, to be completely honest with you. And clients would push back all the time. And we worked on scripts. We practiced anchoring with it. Okay, 2 months later, she was charging consistently. And in fact, we actually increased her fee and split it in half, which is a split fee strategy you can use, which I'll talk about in a different video, I'm sure. She hasn't waived the fee since, and it's been a game changer. So if you want to take action on this thing yourself now, what can you do? Well, write a clear fee statement script it, and then practice it, not until you get it right, but until you can't get it wrong. And you want to say it with confidence as if it's completely normal, because guess what? It is. The fourth framework is all around protection pitching, and I call this one the plant, educate, and present. The problem this one solves is rushed protection sales, which is a very common one. So most brokers, they treat protection like a tick box. It's tacked on to the end of the process, usually when time is short and the client's energy is at an all-time low. Their battery is empty. That makes it feel optional, and clients treat it that way. So what did the top brokers do then? Well, they started talking about protection from day one. They make it part of the mortgage journey. They use stories, they educate, they make it human. They follow this plant, educate, present strategy. So the plant is they introduce the concept early. As part of the process, we're going to also talk about protecting your income and your home. The educate, they share relevant stories during the call. So one client couldn't work for 6 months. Luckily, though, he had cover in place. And then present is they offered 3 options. They had essential, balanced, and comprehensive, or eliminates risk, reduces risk, and accepts risk. Now, the story that really jumps out for me on this one is a broker. Again, we'll call her, let's pick a real cool name for this one. Let's call her Natalie. She actually never sell protection pretty much at all. It felt like a hard sell to her. What we did was we changed her approach. She planted early, as we've said already, and she used personal stories. She offered clear tiered packages. Very clear for the client to understand which options they could choose from. Now, within a few weeks, and genuinely a few weeks, clients were actually asking for the middle one, which was significantly more money than anything she'd ever sold before. And a few people even took the top tier one. Action plan for this one is add a protection conversation into your initial discovery call. You want to have that conversation as early as possible. Create 3 preset protection package options that you're going to do for every single client, and then use client stories to build emotional relevance throughout the process so that when insurance comes up, it's not something that's just completely caught them off guard and they understand the value. So what was that 5th framework? Well, this is the framework about following up, and it's owning the outcome is what I like to call it. And the problem this solved was weak follow through. Far too many calls that I observed ended like this: let me know if you have any questions. Now that is not a close at all. That is a fade out. Clients need clear next steps, or they're just going to disappear into distraction because other things are going to crop up. So the top brokers, what they did differently was they ended every single call with a purpose and a clear next step. They summarized, they set deadlines, they book the next action on that call of what they need to do. So they follow this recap and deadline and next step structure. So recap is, today we covered your goals, your budget, and next steps. Deadline is, let's aim to get your documents uploaded by Friday. And the next step is, I've just dropped a link for you to book in your submission call. One of the brokers I was working with, again, let's pick a name for this one, fancy name is Chris. Then he was actually losing leads after great discovery calls. The discovery calls were actually brilliant, but the clients would just vanish after that. What we actually did was started getting him to send emails of a recap of what had gone on in that appointment to his clients or to the prospect, plus calendar links at the end of each call to send to book in the submission call. And he actually went from around 40% to 70% sharp rate on the submission calls. So in other words, he was closing 7 out of 10 instead of 4 out of 10, which is a massive uptick, which of course we all want that. And the action plan for this, I'd say, is use a template email with a recap, task lists, and booking links for your prospects. Also, booking the next call as soon as you possibly can, wherever it's possible, from that discovery call to submission call, especially if they found the house. If they haven't found the house, obviously you have to wait until they have, but still stay in touch with them. And then the other one is use as much automation as possible to stay consistent. So stay in touch with that client using automated WhatsApp messages, automated emails until they have found a property, so you do not fall out of favor and out of mind with that client. So let's go through 4 bonus mistakes which average brokers make and how you can fix them. These are ones that didn't quite make the cut for me to dial in and really make a big framework in the video for, but they still were things I think you should be aware of. So the first one is freestyling the call. The fix for this is use structure. Even just a little post-it note outline is way better than just getting on and just kind of freeballing it. The second one is dodging hard questions. With this one, just ask about income, dependence, and health as early as you possibly can. Don't beat around the bush with it. Third one was rushing to impress. You see, slow down the process. You want to ask more, sell less. They will like you if you just slow down. The fourth one I noticed was begging for the business. This one's just kind of repulsive, to be honest. You want to lead the call. Don't ask for permission to be the expert of the call. Whatever you do, don't lower yourself down to being someone who's begging. It's really, really off-putting for the client, and it just doesn't look good. You don't need to be slick. You don't need a fancy desk. You just need structure. Every top broker that I looked at through those calls, they all used frameworks like these. They opened with intention. They listened with purpose. They pitched with clarity. They closed with confidence. And guess what? That structure created freedom. It removed all of the chaos and it boosted their conversions. It made them look and feel like leaders in their industry, which they are. Now, if you're winging your calls, you're gambling with your income. You want to start with one framework, try it out for the next 5 calls, then add the next and layer them and build your system. See, confidence comes from control and control comes from clarity. Now, if you want to check out how you can maximize your income as a mortgage broker, check out this video on screen right now. It's definitely one you don't want to miss.